center? Okay, take over from here.
My question goes to Dr. Olara. You said peace and security remains the UN's most important mandate. If elected, where would you focus your efforts first and why? The second question. You describe the Secretary General as someone who builds consensus and proposes creative solutions. Can you share an example from your career where you've had to play that part from? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Otunnu, I want to take this opportunity to wish you all the best for being Uganda's representative as a UN Secretary General. My name is Shakira Kavma from Media Plus. Talking about security, I want to ask you what strategy that you're going to use to make sure that the three major wars that Ambassador Adoni has talked about, I think he made the war about Gaza, he made Gaza and Israeli war, then Russia and Ukraine, then the joint war between Iran, Iraq and US. I want you to tell the Ugandans or the world the strategy that you're going to use that the current Secretary General Antonio Guterres has not used, because we've seen a lot of engagements on the major media houses where UN has always sat, negotiate about the wars. Before you know it, you see there is a ceasefire. Before you know it, you see a war has come up. So what strategy are you going to use to make sure that the world can be at peace? Thank you.
I'm called Musings Branche and I work with Africa Report magazine. Ambassador, I have two questions for you. The first UN straw poll happened last week and you got only 2 positive votes. So now you need more 7 positive votes and you have a limited amount of time. As you said, you cannot get to the US, but also the current US government, it's very unpredictable. It can tell you A today and it does B tomorrow. So you are not sure when you are going to get to New York and start campaigning vigorously. What's your plan B and C and D if you don't get an opportunity to be in New York in the next couple of weeks? The second question is, your views on President Museveni have been known for a long time. And as Ambassador Adoni said, you were in the same room yesterday, you were in the same room yesterday. How do you feel about the President Museveni, and do you think that he has genuine support for you? Finally, United Nations is about human rights, peace and development. Can you comment about the state of human rights in Uganda as it is right now?
Thank you. My name is Daniel Kibet. I work for NTV. First question goes to Ambassador Adoni Ebare. You said the president gave you about 24 hours to ensure that Olara Otunnu has been nominated. Could you please tell us why Uganda decided to nominate Olara Otunnu so late in the process? The other question as well might go to you or might go to the Foreign Affairs Minister, the acting. What is the concrete diplomatic strategy to overcome the widely held view that it is the turn of Latin America? And how does Uganda plan to secure enough support among the 5 permanent members of the UN, of course, of the Security Council rather, who hold veto power? I know that there's for sure no written rule in the UN Charter about regional rotation, but the position has historically rotated among the world's 5 geographical regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. You can respond.
Thank you. Do I press anything here? It's automatic. Sorry. Thank you for the questions. The person from GTV, I think, asked 2 questions. First, what I would do about major ongoing conflicts. Most of the major ongoing conflicts, especially the examples which were given over Iran, situation in Gaza, Ukraine, these are conflicts with huge geopolitical factors at play, where the front row seats in these conflicts are being detained by the major powers. So it is not easy for the UN to influence the course of the conflicts. But that being said, the UN should never be absent, especially the Secretary General. He should always be present, he should always be engaging them, he should always be probing and always looking for opportunities to be helpful. Even if we know that ultimately it depends on them. I'll give you examples later of both Grenada and the Otunnu'S formula, where the ideas, the suggestion, the proposal came from Olara Otunnu, of Uganda only. But it's the major powers who accepted to work with it. So the UN Secretary General should be engaged, should be present, should be listening, should be probing the opportunities to be helpful. Now, when we come to the other conflicts, especially in our region of Africa, I think there clearly the Secretary General can take maybe even a more proactive role for the conflicts which are closer to us in this region. So that is with regard to the conflicts. Now, with regard to examples, I think the questioner said, what examples do you give of building consensus and proposing creative solutions? Well, very quickly, let me give you 3 examples. One, I already mentioned the Otunnu'S formula, which is alive to this day. 2, the Grenada crisis. Grenada is a little island in the Caribbean. And in 1983, all hell broke loose. The president was assassinated. Some troops went in from outside. There was a change of regime. There was chaos. And within the United Nations General Assembly, this was directly reflected, because we then had 2 delegations, both claiming to represent Grenada. And if we did not resolve that issue, the General Assembly could not continue with its activities. It couldn't sit, it couldn't deliberate, because we had to resolve who takes the seat of Grenada. I happened to be at the time the chair of the Credentials Committee. And so I spoke with the US, spoke with the Soviet Union, with Cuba, with China, with Russia, and I was able to come up with an idea that they accepted to solve the problem, and the General Assembly was able to resume its work with the cooperation of everybody concerned. This is another example of key geopolitical context, but a small person, a small country, facilitating, suggesting something that paves a way for them. The third example I can give, you can look this up, by the way, those of you who are very savvy with the internet, that I was the one who was able to persuade the Security Council members to incorporate the welfare, the protection of children, particularly children, women, civilians, as a legitimate substantive peace and security issue of the Security Council. Not incidental, because previously the main concern was about the security of states. But I brought the issue letting those who suffer disproportionately when there is war, that their well-being, their protection should be a substantive issue of the Security Council. And it has become, and then proceeded to put in place various measures. You've heard of the list of commitments made by parties in conflict. I pioneered that. Commitments which are then held as threshold for them. You've heard of the naming and shaming, the list which is produced periodically by the UN of parties who are abusing children and women. I was the one who pioneered this. You've heard of child protection advisors in peace missions around the globe. I pioneered that. So the whole regime in place, a very comprehensive regime of protection for children and women in situations of conflict, and I was very much at the forefront of that. Similarly, by the way, when you look at the Rome Statute is the law that provided for the International Criminal Court. I was very much involved in the creation of the International Criminal Court as an idea, and then in elaborating the statute, which is the law for the court. And if you look carefully, most of the provisions which have been invoked up till now, most of the indictments of people who are taken before the ICC, most of them have been indicted on provisions that I inscribed in the Rome Statute, because most of them are to do with the recruitment, the abuse, the brutalization of children. So I just give those as examples of how a little person, the representative of a relatively small country, can play a large role by building consensus and by proposing creative solutions. Okay? Now, the media plus person also asked about conflicts. I've already answered that. Yes, that the key ones, obviously, Ukraine and situation in Gaza and Iran, those are major players, and I've already given an answer to that. Then the Africa Post person said the first straw polls and what I got in the first straw polls. Well, actually, it's a miracle that Olara Otunnu got 2 positive votes. For my life, I don't even know the brave souls, bless them, who gave me two votes. Because of the situation I described earlier, we have not been able to engage the electors. We have not been able to meet the delegations, go to their capitals, canvass for support, lay out, as I've laid to you, our vision of what we'll do for the UN. All the other candidates, some of them now a year and a half, 1 year, many months, they've been canvassing, they've been engaging them. So it's natural that the member states would have well-defined position vis-a-vis them. But most delegations would have the position understandable that, look, until we meet the candidate, until we hear from the candidate, until we ask questions to the candidate, we cannot formulate our position. It's entirely understandable. So really, I think the verdict on Olara Otunnu is still reserved. We shall find out soon when we get to New York, engage the member states, put our case to them, then we shall have an idea what their verdict is on Olara Otunnu. But I think the first straw poll was important for the other candidates. I think less significant in terms of its message vis-a-vis Olara Otunnu, but I hope we shall remedy that very soon. We don't presume anything, we don't assume anything. We shall put our case and leave it to the good electors to make up their mind and to clarify their position. I think there was also the yes. The views of President Museveni and whether the support is genuine, and also the difference between he and I. Yeah. First, Olara Otunnu remains Olara Otunnu. Olara Otunnu has not changed. President Museveni remains President Museveni. We have areas of divergent views that he knows well, I know well. We discuss it. We've discussed it even recently. It is not a secret that in the past, on 2 occasions, President Museveni himself has said this, that on 2 previous occasions, when Olara Otunnu was the front runner for the position of Secretary General, the government of Uganda blocked that process. President Museveni has said this, so you know it, I know it. But what is significant is that in spite of that, I'm not in government, I'm not a minister in government, I'm not like my brother, a member of the NRM, he's in SEC of the NRM. So what is interesting is different. What is interesting that in spite of this, that there is NRM, there are those who are not in NRM, there are those in government, those who are not in government. There have been differences, significant differences between me and President Museveni. We continue to discuss them. We continue to discuss about national dialogue, about reconciliation. That in spite of that, we have come together as Ugandans to support a common Ugandan project. That's the big news. Not that the differences have disappeared, but that in spite of that, we have been mature enough to say, yes, we continue discussing our differences, but we're all Ugandans. And this is a project for Uganda, by Ugandans. That is what is big. And I think for that, we thank President Museveni and the government and all Ugandans. And that's the spirit in which we should move forward. So that would be my answer to that question. And then the issue of human rights in Uganda. Well, I have been a fighter for human rights all my adult life. We cut our teeth in the political arena fighting for human rights with my brother here in the Idi Amin period, when it was not fashionable to take a stand on human rights. And I've continued all my life. I've given you examples when it wasn't popular to speak and support the International Criminal Court. I, as Uganda's representative, on my recommendation to Kampala, Uganda was one of the very, very few, actually I think one of only 3 African countries that sponsored and supported the establishment of ICC. The same with the High Commission for Human Rights. It was very unpopular. Uganda was one of the very few countries that took the front seat in supporting that. I've chaired the Commission on Human Rights. When the work that I've described now about children is essential about the human rights of children. It's essential about human rights. That's what it is about. I've just now told you how I've spent the last several years back in the belly of the countryside. What have I been working on? Quintessentially a human rights project. How do we give a place under the sun again to these people whose society has collapsed, who have nothing at all because of the years of war? So really, in terms of, I think, human rights, this is something which is very close to my heart, will always be. And if I become Secretary General, I will continue to champion human rights. I want to see all over the world that people, every person deserves to have a life of freedom and dignity. And I'll champion this across the globe. So that is my position. And if you wish to look it up in the archives, please do. It is all on the record. And obviously, I will dialogue with all countries, all leaders concerning human rights without discrimination. That is my position. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. The one which I have not answered, Ambassador Yebare will answer.
Thank you very much. I think the two questions are from the gentleman there. Why submitting the candidature of Dr. Olara Otunnu very late? I think that can be best be answered by the president because for us we received marching orders. But I want to add that it's actually not late. I think Dr. Olara Otunnu will agree with me that in the past selection of the Secretary Generals, there are names that have come out late, including the current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. He was the last one to bring in his candidature. I think what is important is that he gets a chance to engage member states and present his vision. It's not late, and I think it was John Brashe who talked about the US. I think we already got the clearance to travel. We already got the clearance. I think by the end of this week, we will be in New York to engage the member states. And I think the straw polls are an indicator. They are not really, and every candidate got a negative vote from the P5. So the race is wide open. On the issue whether it's the turn of Latin America, no, it's not accurate. I think the only region that can claim to not have produced a Secretary General is Eastern Europe. Latin America has produced a Secretary General and many other regions. I think that formula has been thrown up in the air by the way the Secretary General is selected, and there is no exclusive turn for any region, any of the regions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Ayebale.
Let me just add a historical footnote. In 1981, when Perez de Cuellar was elected, it was thought to be the turn of Africa. And Africa had solidified behind Salim Salim. When things got deadlocked and the field was open to allow new candidates to come through, Salim Salim wasn't succeeded by an African. It was all others who came in the field. I remember Sridhar Ramphal from Guyana, and of course Perez de Cuellar. I remember Sadruddin Aga Khan from all over. They all entered the field, even though it was thought to be Africa's turn. And in the end, it was somebody from Latin America who got elected. This last time, as Ambassador has said, it was thought to be Eastern Europe. And most of those who were fielded were from Eastern Europe. But in the end, it's a Western European, a former Prime Minister of Portugal, who was elected Secretary General. Just very recently, while in Gulu, I was reading, President Trump was reported in the media that he was thinking, he was musing about the possibility of Gianni, the FIFA president, becoming Secretary General. Well, as you know, Gianni is from Switzerland, from Western Europe. So it's just to say that obviously there should be equity. Obviously, one particular region of the world should not dominate. Obviously, things should, change hands. But all that taken into account, I think most member states, from what I hear, would say where we are at the UN right now, where we are in the world right now, the challenges we are facing, that perhaps the most important consideration is to look across the globe and get the best person available to help the UN and help the world.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Otunnu. At this moment, allow me to invite our Executive Director, Mr. Alan Kasuji, to give us the closing remarks, and then we shall close with a group picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this has been a very powerful submission. And my takeaway is that Uganda is a beautiful country. It's a country that is blessed with deep talent. And like Ambassador Otunnu said, there are Ugandans who are competent to operate anywhere. And this is a reflection of that. And the fact that Ambassador Otunnu and President Museveni are collaborating on this project in itself is a testimony of the character of this country. That Ugandans will always have contradictions, we shall always have differences, but in the end, we have one Uganda to serve, and we will always come together to serve the fatherland. On behalf of Uganda Media Center, we first of all wish you the very best, sir, and you can be assured of our complete support. We shall be behind you all the way. And again, it's an honor to have all of you here. And wherever you are watching this from, thank you very much for being a part of this broadcast.